Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are diving into a breaking news story that's got everyone talking: a massive fire at one of the world's biggest battery storage facilities.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story, and we've got a whole stack of articles here to unpack it all for you.
Yeah, so by the end of this deep dive, you'll have a really clear picture of just how big this facility was, and also why fighting this fire was unlike anything firefighters had ever dealt with before, and also the potential impact this whole thing could have on California's clean energy goals.
Yeah, there are a lot of layers to this, and we're going to try to unpack it all.
Okay, so let's set the scene. This all went down Thursday afternoon at a facility owned by the Vistra Corporation
Hmm.
in Moss Landing, California.
And it wasn't just any facility. This housed a 750 megawatt battery plant, which was, until very recently, I think, considered the biggest in the world.
I got to say, megawatt always sounds to me like something out of a sci-fi movie. But to give you an idea, 750 megawatts could power like over 500,000 homes for hours.
Yeah, that's right. It's a huge amount of energy. And this facility was vital for storing energy from, renewable sources like solar and wind power.
So it was like a giant battery for the whole state.
Yeah, you could think of it like that.
So why is this fire such a big deal? I mean, fires happen, right?
Sure, but this fire was not your average warehouse fire. This fire involved lithium-ion batteries, and those behave very differently.
Yeah, and images coming out of Moss Landing were pretty terrifying. Huge flames, smoke plumes that you could see for miles.
Absolutely. And the fire was so intense that they had to evacuate over 1,000 people who lived nearby.
Wow.
And it caused total traffic chaos with Highway 1 and other roads being shut down. They even had to close schools on Friday because of safety concerns.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a major disruption. And it all comes down to the nature of this fire.
Okay, so let's get into that.
Wow.
Why was this fire so hard to fight? What makes lithium-ion batteries so different?
Well, you know how firefighters usually use water to put out fires, right?
Right.
With lithium-ion batteries, that actually makes things worse.
Really?
Yeah.
How so?
See, when these batteries burn, they actually produce their own oxygen. It's like they're fueling the fire from within.
Wow, I did not know that. So, like, pouring water on them is useless.
Worse than useless, it can actually create dangerous chemical reactions.
Yeah.
And release even more toxic fumes.
Oh, that's really scary. So what could firefighters even do in that situation?
Sadly, not much. The safest option was just to let the fire burn itself out.
Oh, wow. That must have been frustrating for everyone involved. And we're talking about a major piece of California's energy infrastructure here.
Exactly. And remember, this facility was designed to store excess energy from, renewables,
Yeah.
helping to smooth out the ups and downs of solar and wind power.
So when the sun wasn't shining or the wind wasn't blowing, this facility could release that stored energy back into the grid, keeping the lights on.
That's right.
Pretty important.
Absolutely crucial to California's energy strategy. The state has these really ambitious goals for, clean energy, and facilities like this are essential for making that happen.
But if these batteries are prone to these crazy fires, does that raise some concerns about California's whole plan? Like, how reliable is this whole system if a single fire can knock out this much storage?
Yeah, it's definitely a valid question. It really highlights the need for a serious conversation about, safety and reliability as we transition to cleaner energy sources. And believe it or not, this wasn't even the first time that this facility had problems.
Seriously, what happened before?
Well, they had some overheating incidents back in 2021 and 2022, which they blamed on water damage to the batteries.
So it seems like these systems are pretty sensitive and maybe not as reliable as we thought. I'm starting to get a little worried about the future of these massive battery farms.
Well, I think it's important to be cautious, but also to keep in mind that this is still a relatively new technology. We're learning as we go.
Yeah, that's true. But this fire really does bring the safety of lithium-ion batteries into question, especially at this massive scale. I mean, they're everywhere these days, our phones, laptops, even electric cars. But scaling them up for, like, the entire state's energy grid, that seems like a whole different ballgame.
It certainly presents some new challenges, and this incident could really push researchers to explore alternative types of batteries that might be safer.
Like, what other options are out there?
Well, some experts are pointing to water-based batteries or something called redox flow batteries as potential alternatives.
So these would use, like, completely different materials than lithium-ion, and they'd be less likely to burst into flames.
That's the idea. But the question is, can they be scaled up to handle the massive energy demands of a place like California?
Right. And is it even possible to make lithium-ion batteries safer? I mean,
Mm.
we can't just abandon this technology altogether, can we?
Probably not. But this fire could lead to stricter regulations and safety protocols for how these large facilities are built and managed.
Right, which hopefully would prevent another disaster like this. This whole situation is definitely a lot to process.
It is. We've got a lot more ground to cover. This incident raises so many questions about the future of energy storage, the feasibility of California's energy goals, and the role of government in ensuring the safety of these large-scale projects. We're just getting started. This fire in Moss Landing, it really puts a spotlight on how important that facility was to California's energy goals.
Yeah, it's like losing uh, a major player on a team, right? And California has really been going all in on renewable energy.
Exactly. They've set these incredibly ambitious targets for switching to clean electricity, aiming for 100% by 2045.
And batteries, especially these big mega batteries like the one in Moss Landing, those are supposed to be the key to making that happen, right?
They are. You can think of them as the pinch hitters coming in when the sun goes down or the wind dies down. They store up all that extra energy from solar and wind farms, so it's ready to go when we need it.
But now with this fire, it's got to be raising some doubts. Can California really pull this off if these batteries aren't as safe as they thought?
Well, some people are definitely calling for a different approach. Maybe not putting all our eggs in one basket, so to speak. Instead of relying so heavily on lithium ion, maybe it's time to look at other types of energy storage more seriously.
That makes sense. Diversify the portfolio, right? Spread the risk.
Yeah.
What are some of those other options again?
We touched on water-based batteries and redox flow batteries earlier. Those are still kind of in the early stages, but they could be promising. And then there are more established technologies like pumped hydro storage.
Pumped hydro. Remind me how that works.
It's kind of clever, actually. They basically use excess electricity to pump water uphill to a reservoir.
Mm-hmm.
Then when you need energy, they let that water flow back down through turbines, generating power.
Oh, right. Like a giant water battery. Isn't that what they do at Hoover Dam?
That's one example. And it can store massive amounts of energy, which is what you need when you're talking about powering a whole state. There's also compressed air energy storage, where you use electricity to compress air into underground caverns.
And then release it to spin turbines when you need power. It's like blowing up a giant balloon and then letting it deflate to do work.
Exactly. So you can see there are options out there. But the big question is, which of these can be scaled up to meet California's needs? And that's where a lot more research and development is needed.
This whole thing is a good reminder that there's no quick fix, no magic bullet when it comes to transitioning to clean energy. It's going to take time, innovation, and probably a whole lot of trial and error.
Absolutely. And California, even with its ambitious goals, is going to have to adapt and adjust its strategy as we learn more. This fire, as unfortunate as it is, could actually be a catalyst for some much-needed change.
Speaking of change, you mentioned earlier that this incident has implications not just for California, but for the whole world. What did you mean by that?
Well, think about it. Countries all over the globe are trying to figure out how to move away from fossil fuels and shift to cleaner energy. And they're all watching California, seeing what works and what doesn't.
So California is like the guinea pig for the world's clean energy experiment.
In a way, yes. And this fire is a lesson for everyone. It shows that even when you're aiming for a cleaner future, there are still risks and challenges to consider. It's a wake-up call about the importance of safety, the need for careful planning, and the value of diversifying your energy sources.
So what California does next will be watched very closely by the rest of the world. Kind of a lot of pressure, huh?
It is, but it's also an opportunity to show leadership, to learn from this experience, and to help chart a safer and more sustainable path forward for everyone.
You know, one thing that's been bugging me is that we still don't know what caused this fire. Are there any, theories out there?
There's been a lot of speculation, but no official word yet. Some people point to those previous overheating incidents at the Moss Landing facility, suggesting there might have been an ongoing safety issue that wasn't addressed.
Right. Like those were warning signs that got ignored.
Others wonder if lithium-ion batteries themselves are just inherently prone to these kinds of fires, especially when you have so many of them packed together in one place.
Kind of like how a small campfire is one thing, but a whole forest fire is something else entirely.
Exactly. And then there are those who suspect it might have been some external factor, like a lightning strike or equipment malfunction.
I guess it'll take time for the investigators to figure it all out. But in the meantime, It's easy to get caught up in all the technical details, the megawatts and battery chemistries and grid infrastructure. But we can't forget about the human impact of this fire.
You're absolutely right. The people who had to evacuate their homes, the businesses that had to close, the entire community that was disrupted, their stories matter too.
Imagine having to leave your home in the middle of the night, not knowing what you'd come back to, or the stress of having your business shut down indefinitely.
It's a stark reminder that even with the best intentions, these big infrastructure projects, whether it's a power plant or a battery facility, can have real consequences for the people who live nearby.
And it highlights the importance of involving communities in the planning process, making sure their concerns are heard and their safety is prioritized.
That's a crucial part of building trust and ensuring that these projects benefit everyone, not just those who are profiting from them.
All right, let's switch gears for a bit and talk about the big picture. What does this fire mean for the future of battery storage? Is this a sign that we need to rethink our reliance on batteries altogether?
It's a valid question and one that a lot of people are asking. The truth is, as we move towards more renewable energy sources like solar and wind, we're going to need ways to store that energy so it's available when we need it.
Because the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow.
Exactly. And batteries, for now, are the best solution we have for doing that at scale. But this fire does highlight the need to proceed with caution, to be mindful of the risks, and to invest in research and development to make batteries safer and more reliable.
So it's not like game over for batteries, but maybe more of a proceed with caution sign.
I think that's a good way to put it. And it also reinforces the need to explore those alternative energy storage options we talked about earlier, like pumped hydro and compressed air. We can't afford to put all our eggs in one basket.
But diversification is key, just like in a financial portfolio.
Exactly. And we need to be open to new ideas and innovations. Who knows what the future of energy storage will look like? Maybe there's a technology out there that we haven't even thought of yet that will revolutionize the way we store and use energy.
Now let's dive a little deeper into how electricity grids actually work, because that's something a lot of people might not fully understand.
Okay, so imagine a giant web of power lines, transformers, and substations all connected together. That's basically what an electricity grid is.
Like a network of highways for electricity.
Exactly. And this network is constantly buzzing with electricity, flowing from power plants to homes and businesses. But here's the tricky part. The amount of electricity being generated needs to perfectly match the amount of electricity being used at any given moment.
So it's like a balancing act.
That's a great analogy. If there's too much electricity on the grid, it can overload the system and cause blackouts.
And if there's not enough, you get brownouts or rolling blackouts, right? Where the lights dim or flicker.
Exactly. And that's where energy storage comes in. It acts like a buffer, absorbing excess energy when there's too much being generated and releasing it back into the grid when there's not enough.
So it helps to smooth out the peaks and valleys of electricity demand. Kind of like a shock absorber for the grid.
I like that. And this is especially important as we add more solar and wind power to the mix, because those sources are intermittent.
Meaning they're not always available.
Right. The sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow, so we need batteries to store that energy, so it can be dispatched when it's needed most, even when the sun is down or the wind is calm.
Makes sense. So the Moss Landing facility, with its massive battery capacity, was playing a crucial role in keeping California's grid stable and reliable. And now that it's gone, there's going to be a gap to fill.
Exactly. And that gap could lead to higher energy prices for consumers, especially during peak demand periods.
So it's not just about the environment and clean energy. It's also about the affordability and reliability of electricity for everyone.
That's a really important point. The clean energy transition needs to be a just transition, one that benefits all members of society, not just a select few. And that means ensuring that electricity remains affordable and accessible to everyone, even as we shift to cleaner sources.
All right, let's talk more about those alternative energy storage technologies, because those seem like they're going to be even more important now.
Okay, so we've already discussed pumped hydro storage, which uses water to store energy, and compressed air energy storage, which uses air. Let's delve a little deeper into some other options.
Sounds good. What else is out there?
Well, there's a technology called thermal energy storage, which involves storing heat or cold for later use.
Like storing up sunshine for a rainy day.
Kind of. You can use a variety of materials for this, like molten salt, ice, or even just water, and you can use it to heat or cool buildings, or even to generate electricity.
That's pretty cool. What are some of the pros and cons of thermal storage?
One of the advantages is that it can be relatively inexpensive, especially if you're using readily available materials like water. And it can store energy for long periods of time. But one of the downsides is that it can be bulky and take up a lot of space.
Interesting. What about other types of batteries? Are there any alternatives to lithium-ion that are worth considering?
There are a few emerging technologies that show promise. One is flow batteries, which use liquid electrolytes to store energy.
How are those different from the lithium-ion batteries we've been talking about?
Well, one of the key differences is that the energy storage capacity and power output are independent of each other in flow batteries. This means you can tailor them to specific needs more easily. Also, they tend to have a longer lifespan than lithium-ion batteries and are less prone to overheating.
Sounds promising, but are they ready for prime time? Could they really be scaled up to handle the needs of a whole state like California?
That's the million-dollar question. Flow batteries are still relatively expensive, and there are some technical challenges to overcome before they can be deployed at a massive scale. But there's a lot of research and development happening in this area, and costs are coming down. So it's definitely a technology to watch.
Okay, so we've got pumped hydro, compressed air, thermal storage, and flow batteries. Are there any other contenders in the energy storage race?
There are a few more, but let's focus on one more that's getting a lot of attention lately: hydrogen storage.
Hydrogen, like the stuff they use in rocket fuel.
The very same. Hydrogen is incredibly energy dense, meaning it can store a lot of energy in a small space. And when you burn hydrogen, the only byproduct is water, so it's very clean.
Wow, that sounds almost too good to be true. What's the catch?
Well, producing hydrogen can be energy intensive, and it's not always the most efficient process. Also, storing and transporting hydrogen safely can be challenging.
So there are hurdles to overcome.
Definitely. But the potential of hydrogen is so great that many countries are investing heavily in research and development.
It seems like there's a lot of exciting innovation happening in the energy storage world. It's almost like a race to see who can come up with the best solution.
It is, and it's a race we need to win if we're going to successfully transition to a cleaner energy future.
This whole conversation has really opened my eyes to the complexities of the energy system. It's like a giant puzzle with all these interconnected pieces.
That's a great way to think about it. And the Moss Landing fire, while a setback, is a reminder that we need to be thinking holistically about our energy future, considering all the different pieces of the puzzle and how they fit together.
All right, let's shift gears again and focus back on lithium-ion batteries for a bit. They're still the dominant technology today, and we need to understand their strengths and weaknesses.
Absolutely. Lithium-ion batteries have a lot going for them. They're energy dense, meaning they can store a lot of energy in a relatively small space. They're also lightweight and have a relatively long lifespan compared to other battery technologies.
That's why they're in everything these days, right?
Yeah.
Phones, laptops, electric cars, they're like the workhorse of the battery world.
Exactly. But they do have some drawbacks. One of the main concerns, as we've seen in Moss Landing, is their flammability.
Right, that's a major issue, especially when you're talking about large-scale energy storage.
And they can be expensive to manufacture,
Yeah.
especially at the scale needed for grid applications. Plus, they do degrade over time, which means they eventually need to be replaced.
So while lithium-ion batteries are a valuable technology, they're not without their challenges.
Yeah.
And this fire has definitely brought those challenges to the forefront.
It has. And it's likely to lead to stricter regulations and safety protocols for lithium-ion battery systems, especially those used for grid storage.
Which is probably a good thing. It's better to be safe than sorry, right?
Absolutely. And it also underscores the need to continue researching and developing alternative battery chemistries that might be less flammable and more stable.
All right, let's zoom out again and consider the broader implications of this fire for the clean energy transition as a whole.
Okay. So this fire is a reminder that the path to a cleaner energy future is not going to be easy. There will be bumps along the way. There will be setbacks.
Like this fire, unfortunately.
Exactly. But it's important to remember that the clean energy transition is not optional. It's essential for the health of our planet and the well-being of future generations. So we need to learn from our mistakes, adapt our strategies, and keep pushing forward.
Resilience is key, right?
Right.
We can't let one setback derail the whole effort.
Couldn't agree more. We need to maintain a sense of urgency, but also be realistic about the challenges ahead. And we need to be willing to have tough conversations, to question assumptions, and to be open to new ideas.
Because the stakes are high. We're talking about the future of our planet here.
And the future of energy is a big part of that. The choices we make today about how we generate, store, and use energy will have profound implications for generations to come.
So we need to choose wisely.
We do, and we need to make sure that everyone has a voice in those choices, not just those with the most money or power. The clean energy transition needs to be a just transition, one that benefits all members of society.
Well said. All right, let's shift gears one last time and talk about the role of innovation in driving progress in the battery industry.
This is where things get really exciting. The battery industry is a hotbed of innovation right now. There are new chemistries being developed, new materials being explored, and new manufacturing processes being refined.
It's like a gold rush for battery breakthroughs.
Exactly. And this innovation is being driven by a confluence of factors. The demand for electric vehicles is soaring, the need for grid-scale energy storage is growing, and the cost of batteries is steadily declining.
So there's a lot of momentum behind this industry, which is encouraging. It seems like we're on the cusp of some major breakthroughs that could revolutionize the way we store and use energy.
I think you're right. And the Moss Landing fire, while a setback, could actually accelerate this innovation. It's a reminder that we need to keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible, to find new and better solutions that are safer, more efficient, and more sustainable.
So while this fire has brought up a lot of difficult questions, it's also a catalyst for progress. It's a wake-up call that we need to be bold and ambitious in our pursuit of a cleaner energy future.
And that we need to be willing to learn from our mistakes and adapt as we go. The journey won't be easy, but the destination is worth it.
Well said.
Yeah.
All right, I want to turn our attention now to some of the specific details that have emerged from the various articles we've reviewed.
Let's dive into the nitty-gritty.
One thing that stood out to me was the fact that the Moss Landing facility had experienced those previous overheating incidents, the ones back in 2021 and 2022.
Right, and both of those incidents were attributed to water damage to the batteries.
Which raises questions about the durability of these systems and the adequacy of the safety protocols that were in place. It seems like there may have been some warning signs that were overlooked or downplayed.
That's a valid point. And it highlights the need for more robust safety standards and testing procedures for these large-scale battery systems.
Another interesting detail was the fact that a neighboring battery plant, owned by PG&E, also experienced a fire in 2022.
That's right. And that fire involved Tesla Megapacks, which are a different type of lithium-ion battery system. But the fact that two separate battery facilities in the same area experienced fires within a relatively short time frame is concerning.
It does make you wonder if there's some broader systemic issues at play here.
It does, and it underscores the need for a comprehensive review of industry practices and regulatory oversight to ensure that these systems are being designed, installed, and operated as safely as possible.
Now, let's talk about some of the individuals and organizations that have been mentioned in the coverage of this story. One of the key players is obviously Vistra Corporation, the company that owns and operates the Moss Landing facility.
Right, and they're one of the largest energy providers in the United States. They've been a vocal advocate for battery storage and other clean energy technologies, but this fire is a major setback for them. It's going to damage their reputation and could lead to costly lawsuits and regulatory scrutiny.
It's a reminder that even companies with good intentions can make mistakes. And when it comes to something as potentially hazardous as large-scale battery storage, those mistakes can have serious consequences.
Another organization that's been mentioned is the California Public Utilities Commission, or CPUC.
They're the state agency responsible for regulating utilities and ensuring the reliability of the grid, right?
Yeah. Exactly. And they're going to be under pressure to investigate this fire thoroughly and to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again.
It seems like there's a lot of accountability to go around here.
There is. And it's important that everyone involved learns from this experience and takes steps to prevent similar incidents from happening in the future.
Now let's talk about some of the experts who have weighed in on this issue. One of the most vocal critics of lithium-ion batteries for grid storage is Jody Lutkenhaus, a professor of chemical engineering at Texas A&M University.
She's been arguing for years that we need to develop safer battery alternatives, like those water-based or redox flow batteries we discussed earlier. She believes that lithium-ion is just too volatile and risky for large-scale applications.
So she's not convinced that lithium-ion is the answer.
Not at all. And she's not alone. Yugong Ju, an engineering professor at Princeton University, shares her concerns. He's been quoted as saying, no matter what kind of lithium battery you use, when you reach a certain size, it is inherently very dangerous and easy to catch fire.
That's a pretty stark warning. It seems like these experts are urging caution and calling for a more diverse approach to energy storage.
They are, and it's a message worth listening to. The clean energy transition is too important to put all our eggs in one basket.
All right, let's wrap up this part of our deep dive by considering some of the potential solutions that have been proposed in response to this fire.
Sounds good. Where do we start?
Well, the most obvious solution is to improve the safety of lithium-ion batteries. This could involve developing new battery chemistries that are less flammable, or implementing stricter safety protocols for the design, installation, and operation of battery systems.
Right. We need to do everything we can to mitigate the risks associated with this technology, especially as we deploy it at larger scales.
Another solution is that diversification we've been talking about, investing in a mix of different energy storage technologies. Instead of relying solely on lithium-ion,
Exactly. We need to explore those alternatives like pumped hydro, compressed air, thermal storage, and flow batteries. And we need to be open to new ideas and innovations that might emerge in the coming years.
a third potential solution is to improve grid management, using artificial intelligence and other advanced technologies to better predict and manage fluctuations in supply and demand.
That's a crucial piece of the puzzle. A smarter grid could help us make the most of the resources we have, including intermittent renewables and energy storage.
And it could help us avoid those blackouts and brownouts that can disrupt our lives.
Exactly. It's all about creating a more resilient and reliable energy system that can meet our needs today and in the future.
This whole conversation has been a real deep dive into the world of energy storage and the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too. It's amazing how one event, like this fire in Moss Landing, can spark so many important questions and conversations.
And hopefully those conversations will lead to positive change, to a cleaner, safer, and more sustainable energy future for all of us.
I think they will. It's clear that the world is waking up to the importance of energy storage and the need to find solutions that work for everyone.
It's kind of crazy when you think about it. We often talk about the clean energy transition in terms of technology, right? But this whole thing with Moss Landing, it just shows how much of it is really a human story.
You're absolutely right. We're talking about people's homes, their livelihoods, their sense of security. And it goes beyond just this one incident, you know?
Right, exactly. As we shift toward, things like renewable energy and battery storage, there are going to be like ripple effects across entire communities. Jobs will change, landscapes will be transformed, and we need to make sure that those transitions are fair and equitable.
Yeah. It's a reminder that we can't just focus on the technical aspects of clean energy. We need to be thinking about the social and economic impacts as well.
And that brings up the role of government. They have a huge responsibility in navigating this whole transition.
Yeah, they do. It's about setting policies that encourage clean energy development, providing incentives for businesses and individuals to make the switch and making sure that safety regulations are up to par.
And we need to hold them accountable for making sure that those policies are actually implemented effectively and fairly.
Couldn't agree more. It's a complex challenge, but it's one that we need to tackle head on.
So
Yeah.
I want to talk about something that's been on my mind through this whole conversation. The media's role in all of this.
Oh, that's interesting. What are you thinking?
Well, they have a huge responsibility, right? Informing the public about these complex issues. But they also have a responsibility to report accurately and avoid sensationalizing things,
It's a delicate balance. We need to be able to rely on the media to give us the facts so we can form our own opinions. But it's also important to be aware that bias can kind of creep in, even unintentionally.
Exactly. So it's always a good idea to get your news from multiple sources and to think critically about what you're reading and hearing.
Absolutely. That's a crucial skill in today's world, especially with so much information flying around.
Okay, so let's dive back into some of the specifics from our stack of articles. One thing that really stuck with me was the fact that the Moss Landing facility wasn't the only battery plant to have a fire recently.
Oh, right. Remember that PG&E facility we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
The one with the Tesla Megapacks? That also had a fire last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if there's some broader industry-wide issues that need to be addressed.
Yeah, it's not just a one-off incident. And it makes those warnings from experts like Jody Lutkenhaus and Yiguang Zhu even more concerning. I mean, they've been saying for a while now that lithium-ion batteries might not be the safest option for large-scale storage.
Yeah, and incidents like these definitely lend weight to their arguments. It seems like more research into alternative battery technologies is absolutely crucial.
Speaking of research, what are some of the solutions that people are proposing to prevent these fires from happening in the future?
Well, some are focusing on improving the safety of lithium-ion batteries themselves, maybe developing new chemistries that are less flammable, or coming up with better ways to, manage heat within the batteries.
Kind of like adding a cooling system to a computer to prevent it from overheating.
Exactly. Others are saying we need to move away from lithium-ion altogether and focus on those alternative energy storage options we talked about. Pumped hydro, compressed air, thermal energy storage, flow batteries, even hydrogen.
So basically, diversifying our energy storage portfolio, just like we diversify our financial investments to spread the risk.
That's a great way to think about it. And then there's the idea of improving grid management, making it smarter and more flexible so it can better handle the ups and downs of renewable energy generation.
So a combination of better batteries,
Yeah.
a wider range of storage options, and a smarter grid. That sounds like a pretty comprehensive approach.
It does, but it's going to take time, investment, and collaboration to make it all happen.
And political will, I imagine.
Definitely. This isn't just a technological challenge, it's also a political and social one. We need to work together to create a future where clean, safe, and reliable energy is available to everyone.
All right, so I think we've covered a lot of ground here today. Before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something we talked about earlier, the human element of this story, the Moss Landing fire. It wasn't just about technology. It was about people's lives being disrupted, businesses having to close, a community being thrown into uncertainty.
Absolutely. We can't forget about the people who are impacted by these events, both directly and indirectly.
And it highlights the need for transparency and communication from the companies and government agencies involved in these projects. People need to know what's going on and how it might affect them.
Absolutely. Building trust is essential, and that starts with being open and honest about the risks and benefits of any new technology or infrastructure project.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into the Moss Landing battery fire, I think we can distill a few key takeaways for our listeners.
Yeah, sounds good. What are your top three?
Okay, so number one, this fire is a wake-up call about the potential risks of large-scale battery storage. While it's a crucial technology for a clean energy future, we can't ignore the safety concerns.
Right, and as we've discussed, this incident could lead to stricter regulations and safety protocols for these facilities, which is a good thing, but it also might make investors a little more cautious, potentially slowing down the rollout of these crucial systems. It's a tricky balance.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, takeaway number two. We need a diversity of energy storage solutions. Putting all our eggs in the lithium-ion basket might not be the wisest strategy, especially as demand scales up. This fire could accelerate research into those alternative battery chemistries we talked about, like water-based or redox flow, and even things like pumped hydro or compressed air storage.
Yeah, that variety